everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting community, the acquisition community, and our industry partners connect to talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I am your host for today. I'd like to introduce my co-host, my colleague, my partner, my friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing?
Hey, Will, it's great to see you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We're in another one, 22.
I don't know how high energy will be. You know, we've been celebrating the new year.
We always got a little bit left in the tank. We always got a little bit left in the tank.
We always do it. If we don't, we find it during our conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Well, I'm going to kick it off with our disclaimer, and then I'm going to let you introduce our topics. So here we go. Our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although a few of those do come out occasionally. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. Over to you, Will.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. So this time of the year, it's always feels very energizing to me. After the holidays, so let's go back a quarter. At the end of fourth quarter, everybody's like, okay, we declare victory, we won. Everyone is in recoup mode. Soon thereafter, because dollars hadn't necessarily fallen from or have been allocated through the program or been in play, in hand. So
say it in English. They haven't passed the damn budget. They forgot September 30th.
Fair enough. So the budget hasn't been passed. Dollars haven't been allocated. No, very few dollars are flowing through the organization. Soon thereafter, in October and November, December, we're in the holiday season. So oftentimes it's hard to get people's attention. They're leaning into the holiday season. But after New Year, it's like when you come back from the New Year break, I always got this high energy. That was my high energy period because it was actually, you had stuff to do. So I want to talk about, and I'd love you just to tap in a little bit to your experiences. I'll share a few of mine of what that second quarter game plan looked like. When you were back, we were back in the saddle, holidays are gone, money is starting to flow. What are the things we would be thinking about and doing as we're positioning ourselves, knowing that third and fourth quarter is just right around the corner?
So I'm glad that you said high energy, because I thought it was more like fear. Like, oh, damn, second quarter. I only got 3 quarters to get all this stuff done. Because that's the way I always thought about it. I don't know. I mean, I had energy, no question, right? But I always thought about it as like, oh, it's like, we just blew a quarter here. Yeah. Don't have a budget. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to be when we grow up for this year. And you're still dealing with the drama of continuing resolution, because let us not forget, continuing resolution creates work.
Yes.
Because now you have to take, in some cases, certain fixed price contracts and break them down so that you can, quote, incrementally fund them. You have to take necessary actions to help your programs manage that continuing resolution money. So I'm glad you said high energy. That's a very politically correct way to put it. I would like to say fear, because you go, well, damn, the calendar has now moved on, and now I got to get it in high gear and do some things. So when I think about, like, what are the things that I focused on, first I'm going to talk a little bit about it as a contract specialist, but also I'm going to talk about it as a supervisor, manager, and leader, because the roles are very different. So as a contract specialist, you're starting to look at, what's this workload on my desk? How do I manage it? What do I need to do? What do I need to tell my bosses about this workload, right? About the support that I need. And we always say we need more people. Good luck with that. Okay, just put that one aside. You know, you're never going to be overstaffed in a procurement office. If you have one, call me. I'm coming to work there, because I have never, in 40 years of my career, never worked in an overstaffed procurement, fully staffed, let alone overstaffed procurement office. Came close, but never got 100% there. But what I would think about as a supervisor is how do I help my people get their job done? How do I look at their workload, maybe rearrange that workload and work with the customer to identify what's coming down the pike? So I was the queen of the end of year memo as a supervisor. And actually I started elevating that so that it would always come out from the top echelon, like the HCA, to come out the end of year memo that says, okay, here's what it takes to accomplish a procurement based on the dollar value and the strategy. Just kind of gave some standard timelines, knowing that that will vary based on how much you know, what you know, and how you're going to do it. But I would immediately start that. The other thing that I was very big on, approving $0 PRs. Saying to the customer, I know we don't have a budget for this fiscal year, but I can't wait now, February,
show up.
whatever the date may be coming down the pike. Because by the way, February 18th is no guarantee you're going to get a budget.
Absolutely.
February 18th is a guarantee that you might get another continuing resolution or a government shutdown. That's the only thing you guarantee. So I used to push that end of year memo and then going to the customer and saying $0 PRs. Get me info. I need to know what's coming. What are you thinking about? You know what you put in your budget. You know the likelihood of what you're going to get. You have a really good idea. Let's talk about what you need, when you need it, and what can we do to get started. So we can get going with paperwork, getting reviews and approvals and that kind of stuff. Recognize that you put a little disclaimer in your file that you're still waiting for funding. And for those things that you really couldn't wait, because there are things you just can't wait.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I would go and ask the CFO to give me a certification that once the budget got approved, that funding would come through.
Oh,
The budget got approved.
tricky.
Yeah. You're sitting on a solicitation, and then you're going to burn industry is who you're going to burn, which means you're going to burn your competition and the benefits of competition, because the only people that are going to bid are the ones that knew what was coming, right?
Yeah.
So those were two things that I did as a supervisor, as a manager, and as an HCA. But then as an HCA, the other thing that I try to do is get out and strategically have discussions with the customers. And I actually tried to start that back in September, October, to say, tell me what's coming. And now it's time to firm it up. And to impress upon those programs, you got to make some decisions now. I recognize you don't have a budget. I recognize that, your decisions could change. But you right now have to lay down for me, what are your priorities? What are your needs? And when do you need it by in this fiscal year? So that we can start coming up with our, make sure that we put our game plan in place, and then we'll adjust. And then we got to meet on a regular basis to keep adjusting. You cannot wait for the budget to get passed. If you're waiting for that, you're not going to get there.
Yeah, agreed. So Soraya, you're right in line with at least my thinking of how I used to tackle, second quarter. I used to look at the game plan as working on both the supply and the demand. The supply being the workforce. It's like, okay, this is what we need to effectively execute an annual spend. Fourth quarter should be pretty fresh. It was just 90 days ago. So the pain, whatever joys and pains that came along with that end of the year, they should be fresh. So first thing is try to tackle anything that fell off the rails that didn't have the desired outcome that you were looking for, whether that was, a procurement, a strategy, a size of a team, a quantity of acquisitions that were funneled to a team, going and looking at all of that, taking a big picture, look at that and see if there are ways to balance or reorchestrate what that looked like, because another fourth quarter's coming. Okay, so leaning into that, first looking at it from a workforce perspective, where are the people, where are the demands, see if there's an opportunity to match that a little better. If there are training opportunities or development opportunities, now is the time to get them. I used to hate when people used to tell me that they were too busy to train somebody. Okay, it's like that phrase should be struck from our language. Okay. Yeah. Too busy to train, it just doesn't, even the words just don't make sense when you string them together. That the value of taking the time to train somebody actually gets you the value of having more people to do it. Okay, so you have to, it's an investment. I got it. I acknowledge the point. And the type A personalities that are attracted to our communities anyway, I understand that it's easier for them to do it than to take the time to train. I got it. But the investment is not for now, it's for tomorrow. You know, so that investment on the people side, when you're talking about the demand, and we're talking about the supply, is about the workforce. How do we remold, now that we've gone through the crucible of one fiscal year, how do we take that information and mold the team? Sometimes it's additive, maybe you're going and hiring or moving around, maybe you got some losses, whatever that is. But how do you mold that so you're in better position for the demand of the next time? Now, when you're talking about the demand, that's the, like you said, working with the program office. Where are the requirements coming from? Who has what? What's in the queue? What's coming? How do we chew that? How do we take that elephant and chew it? Start planning. That starts, and I've always said that an effective Q4 starts in Q2. Okay, effective Q4 starts in Q2 because that's where you start laying the foundations for the successes that you will realize in Q4. So on both supply and demand side, for me, it was really about how do you take the team that you have, okay? Because we don't go to war with the team we want. We go to war with the team we have, okay? So we go with the team we have. How do we elevate that for the next cycle? And then how do we work on the demand signals that are coming in? How do we position them? How do we go out? How do we do advanced work to go pull those things in as early as possible? I love the work you said. It's like, we're gonna start on the early side. And I think if you start early and go pull them forward, those two things together could be very powerful for an effective or a more effective fourth quarter.
So a couple of things. I like your supply and demand analogy. Just a couple of things. So I think today's leader has to be constantly looking at staffing. I don't think it pays anymore to just look at it incrementally. It's got to be like a constant in the equation.
That's fair.
So one of the things, I mean, literally, I used to require, as chief procurement officer, and I did it even as HCA, I was constantly looking at my staffing numbers. Who's leaving? Who's coming in? Am I being able to get enough people in to overcome the folks that are leaving? That becomes extremely important because as people start to depart, more people will depart because now they're burdened with more workload. So they go, oh, I can go work over there and they have a lot less. Blah, blah, blah. So people are energized when they see that you keep that team replenished. That's what I meant by looking at workload as well.
Sure.
Looking at who's doing what, who are best at what, so that I put the work in the right teams, or I move work if I've got a team overloaded. Because I remember that when I first became HCA, that was one of the phenomenons that I had to deal with, both at ICE, when I became the head of contracting at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and in the Office of Procurement Operations. You have to constantly watch that workload, because what happens naturally is certain amounts of work land, like the CIO can generate a lot of work. So you're right, if you have a group that specializes in IT, they could get really totally loaded up. And theirs is like a constant, right? Because it's constantly happening. They get nailed at the end of the fiscal year, because a lot of times we fund our IT programs, let's just speak honestly, with end of year money, right? Yeah. So what happens is they get burdened. So I'm giving away all the secrets of government. So anyway, oh yeah. So you have to constantly be watching that so that you keep that workload a little bit more evenly distributed, and you don't create the haves and have-nots, or the worked and not so overworked. You know what I mean? I'm going to say it in that. But one of the things that I think staffing leaders today have to be looking at it constantly. They have to constantly be thinking about, how do I keep a bench? How do I keep people in the queue? How do I keep people excited and energized, wanting to come to my agency? How do I get to that 85, 90, 95% staffing level? That's what I fought for. It's called overhire. Some agencies don't like to do that. I did, because I used to tell everybody, forget it, don't worry about it. I could overhire 110%. I'm still going to end the year at probably 90. Right. Because that's just the way the cycle goes. The cycle, yeah. We got to do a study like the last 3 years. You know that's true. That's number one. But number two, and more importantly, so you got to look at that, and you can look at your workload from previous years to kind of predict what's going to happen this year. Yeah. It ain't rocket science. And I used to get really upset with some of my managers. They go, I don't want to zero down the PRs because you don't know that procurement's going to get done and I have to work on it. Let me tell you the one thing I learned in 40, sorry, I'm making fun of some people. Anyway, things that I learned, and when I was a contract specialist, I learned this. No effort is ever wasted.
Wasted. Zero.
You start working that procurement now. You may not do that one first, but you're going to end up doing it.
Yeah.
You're
Agreed.
going to end up using that package at some point or another. So you might as well go ahead and work it if they're ready to work it. And then you have it ready to go. And all you got to do is dust it off and update it. I can't tell how many times I used to tell people that all the time. But people would actually argue that with me. They
Oh,
go,
yeah.
oh, I don't want to work on that because they're not ready. And I'm like, trust me, you're going to work on it.
It's okay. It's okay.
So, and you know what? People finally learn, because I used to say to them, I'm willing to bet a paycheck. And my paycheck is higher than yours. I'm willing to put my paycheck on the line. And I'll be like, I'm not going to take that back because I wouldn't bet that. But it was true. And you know it's true.
Yeah,
it is really true. So it behooves you to like sit down with the customer, whether you're the contract specialist, the supervisor, the manager, at all levels, we need to be having these conversations and understanding what's coming. What is the impact and what are the priorities? Notice I said priorities, not just what's coming, but when do you need it by?
Yeah.
And in what order? So that we can start making sure that we're ready to go and that we're alerting industry, because there's another piece of this equation. And that's the industry side of this. Not only internally do I got to get my group together, right? And then I got to pull my CFOs, my CIOs, my program officials, et cetera, internally to make this happen. But I got to have industry lined up and ready to go to put proposals together. And the more complicated the procurement, I got to give them time and I got to give them information. So it behooves us to sit down with the customer and say, what do we know? What do we think we're going to do? And let's go tell industry what we're thinking about. So they can start lining their little duckies and getting information back to us. I can't tell how many times I went to program officials and said, look, I got it. I got it that if you want this by 30 September, especially if it was very complicated,
Sure.
I go, you need to go put a draft solicitation out now.
Yeah.
Let's go put a draft out, get comments from industry, because industry starts working on that proposal based on that draft. They are going to start putting together their teams. They're going to start pulling, assembling their subs, that kind of stuff. Critically important, because I'm going to tell you what, they don't have a magic wand either. I used to joke around and say, I'm the one with the magic wand and the broom. Okay. And there are times that I got the magic wand, but there's I have the broom, right? Got to come out with the broom and say, let's get on the program. Too many people take it literally that, oh, well, we got to wait for the money. No, you don't.
Yeah, I don't agree.
You can't make an award without the money. That's what the language says.
Agreed. Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
The language doesn't say your butt can't plan, your butt can't send out an RFP. It doesn't say any of it.
It doesn't say any of that. Yeah.
Exactly. Your solicitation can say this is subject to the
availability of funds. Yeah.
Oh, bingo. And you can do everything. Make a contract award. Certainly, it is risky. There is a possibility that you might not get the funds, but that probability is pretty low if it's a high priority program.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. And Sarai, you touched on what would be my third one is the data. We have data that can be used to inform the future. Unlike in financial investments where they said past performance is no indication of future performance, you can look at procurement data and it's a high degree of correlation. Past is certainly it has a high correlation to the future. Now, every now and then we have these black swan events like COVID. No one would have predicted that, and that the associated spend that would be happening for pandemic response. But outside of that, outside of those black swans, you absolutely can take your spend data from the year and dissect that data and draw some conclusions that you can be actionable against.
Look at patterns over the years.
Absolutely.
I was back 5 years worth of data. I was constantly looking at 5 years worth of data.
Absolutely. It's very capable of doing that. The second piece of the data that I think is critical is the concept of doing after action reports, or what we used to call hot washes. It's like looking at the old execution. So you look at the data. First, you have a good look at the data, but then we go and look at the execution. How did we perform under fire? And go and look at that activity and really take some magnifying glasses to it to say, how did we perform? Because we know, like I said, we know a third and fourth quarter is coming again. And if you can build the story. If the spend is fairly homogeneous year over year, it looks pretty much the same, and we're doing the same activities, and we have roughly the same amount of people doing it, then it's going to keep looking the same way if you aren't intentional and deliberate in taking your knobs and turning them, and dialing in a better, something different than what happened last time. So I believe I am just a fanatic about the hot wash, the after action report, looking at your activity, looking at your performance, examining your performance, finding the things that you were doing great at, pour fuel on those. Those ones you knocked out the park, let's double up on those. Okay. And then those, please.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, that's exactly why I stood up the Procurement Innovation Lab, to say we probably can find a better way to do that if we just think about what we did before and how we do it better going forward, right? Because
absolutely,
never on our side.
Never.
Great. And then the other thing, you brought up the black swan. And let me tell you something. I used to tell folks all the time, I say this all the time. It just seemed like I worked at the agencies that had all the black. At least it felt that way, right?
Yeah.
You worked at DOD, you worked at DHS, right? A lot of these institutions, they had the black swans.
Yeah.
And so you better plan the ones coming.
You better plan for them, right?
But it's something, well, it could be a hurricane. No, you are going to have a hurricane season and you're probably going to have a crappy one.
Absolutely.
Assume that. So you got to assume that you're going to get sucked into something over here. So you better be planning ahead. I 100% agree with you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, that's fine. I just believe that the black swan events, while they are indeed these unpredictable events, there's always a unpredictable event. So like you said, plan for the unexpected, because there will always be an unexpected. Every year there was something that we didn't expect. So you must accommodate for that, save space for the unknown thing, because there will be an unknown thing.
Exactly. And it depends on the agencies too.
Sure, in other words, absolutely.
When you work at an agency like DHS, you know something's going to come up.
Absolutely.
Right? Because of all the multitude of missions and the things that we have to deal with. You work at a DOD, same thing. You work at a Social Security Administration, IRS. You can predict the black swans that are coming.
Absolutely. I remember when I was at ICE, every year there was a unpredicted population of individuals that were coming across the border. It's like, it was different. It was a different construct of them every year. But every year we had this thing, we even had a name for it. They called it seasonality. That every spring we'd have some unique thing, because that was the season where it was more accommodating from a weather perspective to come across the border. So it's like, okay, so it's like, black swan, not a black swan. It's just June.
But that goes to your point about data. Just as you can analyze your procurement activity, you can take a look at historically the events that have shaped our country, and you can see the black swans and
see patterns.
So organizations like FEMA was always prepared for hurricane season because they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
They knew it was coming. They said, well, hurricane season starts here and it ends here. And typically this is the worst month. You could even predict what was the worst month. I could tell you the worst month of hurricanes in Puerto Rico. September.
Yeah.
September traditionally has been a really bad month.
Late season hurricanes. Yeah.
Pattern, because data helps you discern patterns.
Yeah, I get it.
But going back to this second quarter phenomenon, I think it's extremely important. People kind of like, I do hear people sometimes say, continuing resolution ends on February. I think this year it's February 18th. No, no. You could find yourself in more continuing resolution.
Sure.
God knows I always hope not, but you can find yourself in more continuing resolutions, and you can't pretend that the continuing resolution stops you from doing the job. We still have missions to fulfill. The federal government is not there as window dressing. What we do is important, and it's critical to the citizenry, and the people that come and visit, live, and work in our country. And so we have to make sure that we are prepared to deliver those missions, and so we have to be planning. So I do think those $0 PRs make a difference. I think leadership has to come together and have their game plan and talk about priorities, what's coming, what's needed, how it's done. And the most important thing, you always like to say, plant that flag. I say, wave that flag, right? Take care of your workforce, because if not, they're going to walk. They're going to walk on you if they don't feel supported. And you can't wait till the last minute to be staffing your organization. You got to be constantly monitoring that and making it happen. And, for all these people, like, oh, well, I don't want to hire people virtually, blah, blah, blah. I hired a ton of people virtually. I didn't. My staff hired a ton of people virtually. Some of them worked out and some of them didn't. That's just the way it goes.
Just like when they were physical and they walked in the building.
Exactly.
Some of them worked out and some of them didn't.
Yeah, some of them looked like really good and you were like, whoa, how impressive. And then they came in and you're like, whoa.
What just happened? Right. What just happened?
And other times you looked at a few people and your people went, oh, come on, he's not a dud. And you're like, she looks like a dud. No, she looks like a dud. Right. And then all of a sudden it turned out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Absolutely.
So, you gotta adjust to the times, you gotta adjust to the situation, you gotta plan, you gotta work, but you gotta take care of that workforce, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make it happen. And the more information that you can impart to them about what the priorities are, what to expect, what their workload is going to look like, and how you're going to help them. People don't get upset about being overworked. This is my opinion. I never had staff push back on me about being overworked because they were overworked. They pushed back when they didn't feel supported, appreciated. I'm going to use those two words, supported and appreciated. If they didn't feel supported and appreciated, then they didn't want to work their butts off. And I'm not going to tell you that 100% of the staff wants to work their butts off, but most people are going to work for you when they feel supported and appreciated. I think those two words come up to valued, right?
Yeah,
and so I made it a point to make sure that my folks felt valued. And I can't tell you that 100% of them believed me or thought it, but I know a lot of them did. They knew that I really cared, because I did know what was going on with their programs. I did know what their customers were up to. And I did intervene sometimes when I thought customers were being unreasonable.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not just about, showing up to talk to the customer when the sun is shining. You got to get out there when it's pouring rain and it's nasty.
Absolutely.
And sometimes remind the customer, no, my folks, you talk to me. You have a problem, you come to me. You don't talk down to them. I had to have that conversation.
Well, Soraya, you just touched on what I think would probably be a third piece that leadership that your teams are looking for from leadership. And it actually shows up in this second quarter conversation. It's managing the chaos. It's like being out front and leading. We know we can't stop the chaos, but once it shows up, it can be managed. Okay. And
start managing it before.
I think it's fair. But I just believe leadership, people want to see people out front and leading, head cheerleader, head roadblock remover. Those are the two jobs. Those are the two jobs. So that's why I believe just the ability to manage the chaos. And people know chaos. No one has the ability to see around the corner. Okay. You can anticipate. I think that's part of the leadership thing. It's kind of, okay, let's look at the data. Let's look at the past. Let's look at the seasonality. Let's anticipate what's coming around the corner so you can plan for it. But once it comes around the corner, I think teams, at least I did, I was always looking for our leadership to say, okay, it's okay. Never too high, never too low. It's okay. We got it. We got it. So I think it's a value. I think it's a value piece of that. What you call about value? You called it value. That value proposition is the ability to actually leading. Managing the chaos. Managing the chaos.
Well, and look, sometimes as a leader, you have to step in. I can't tell you how many times I actually had to step in, because sometimes either my counterpart on the program side, or even sometimes the political appointee, the expectations were unrealistic, or the demand was somewhat unrealistic given what we had to work with. And so that's where leaders have to lead. Sometimes you just can't let that to your people. You got to pick up the phone and go show up at a meeting and say, hey, let's talk about this. It's not a battle. And look, never did I ever walk away from any of those meetings bloodied, and they never walked away bloodied. They might not have gotten 100% of what they wanted. Sometimes my folks might have had to take a couple extra steps to deliver what was needed, but I would sit there and actually negotiate with the program sometimes about what they were asking for. To say, Can't do that. We're not going to be able to do this for you. Here's what we can get you. And here's how we can move this forward. Because sometimes people get wrapped up in the end product, right? You know, the customer said they want XYZ.
Yep.
And they get wrapped up in XYZ. And I'm like, hey, start with ABC.
Yeah,
Get
focus.
right now. Right?
Right.
Do something now. What can we give them now to keep it going? We're going to get you there, but we might not be able to get you there in the time frame that you've given me. So let me show you what I can get you to and how I'm going to get you there. And I think sometimes that's where leadership has to step in to
Absolutely.
negotiate that reasonable, because sometimes on the program side, the employee, the program level employee that's working with the contract specialist is just as scared to go to their boss and say,
Oh,
"Can't do
absolutely.
it."
Probably more so.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
probably more so.
Right.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it takes people like us to walk in and have those conversations. And I was never afraid to do that. And I wasn't afraid to escalate it. It had to go above me. Because sometimes, you know, with certain political appointees, you have to go above, right? But
Yeah.
I would always say, what's the interim we can offer? What's what you know, if you don't know the outcome, don't even come and talk to me, but you know what they're trying to achieve,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So what can we get them in between? And that's where that collaboration across the CXO suite and across your own organization becomes extremely important. You can't do this job if you're not talking to your policy folks, your oversight folks, just
Yep.
in your organization, because your policy folks can be looking at what policies are going to impact you
Sure.
and whether or not that's really a policy. Is that law?
Sure. What's
Or is it
coming?
policy,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
this something that we can go get a signature to? You can waive it, Soraya. You know, at CPO, I used to always go, what can I waive?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
This pandemic hit. Literally, I went to my policy folks and I said, tell me everything that I can waive within my authority. And then tell me what I got to go to the boss to waive to be able to enable my people to do the job.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
nobody's going to want to hear, oh, well, we have to wait.
Well, we have this policy.
So this is where your policy folks come into play.
Yeah.
Your site people, your
Right.
lawyers, bring everybody
Yeah.
together. But then you
Yeah.
got to bring everybody else into the equation, right?
Yeah.
The rest of that CXO suite that might
Absolutely.
because not every solution sits in the procurement realm.
You got it. You got it. Awesome. Well, Soraya, it's that time. I knew this was going to be a good one. I knew this was going to be a good one. This is high energy. This is high energy. Fair enough.
All kidding aside, I mean, this is something that I'm extremely passionate about, because what I think about most at a time like this, when we're in the second quarter and you're under a continuous, I think about the workforce. I
Yeah.
really do. I think about the
Absolutely.
workforce, and I think about the workforce being the contracting community, the program community that are trying to do Mission Impossible. And I also think about the vendor community.
Yeah,
Whether
agreed.
it's a small business, mid-tier, or large, the vendor community is going to get asked to step up, and they're going to get asked to step up with not a lot of information. We have to be thinking about that.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So nuggets. Let's leave on some nuggets. You
Take it
got
away.
one.
You nugget first.
Me first? Okay. Well, my nugget will be relationship building that you will leverage in the fourth quarter starts in the second quarter. Okay. When you come back, start building the relationships. Your data will inform you where you're going to have tough spots. Your experiences will inform you where you had tough spots before. Those should be informing you of what relationship building you need to start building now, because fourth quarters are coming again. Okay. And you'll need to be able to arm wrestle and do those relationships, do those negotiations, do those exchanges of value in the fourth quarter. And all of those, in my opinion, are built upon effective relationships. So you got to go build the relationship before you need it. That's my nugget.
Outstanding. Great nugget. I'm going to go with leaders lead. Leaders, you have to lead. And I'm talking about all the leaders in the chain, not just the head person. I'm talking about that manager, that supervisor, that team leader, contract specialist. That team has to come together and make smart, intelligent, risk-managed decisions. You cannot be risk averse in this environment. Right. When you are working for the federal government, supporting the missions that we all support, Social Security, IRS, pick the mission. It doesn't matter. When you're operating under continuing resolutions that are a constant, we know that, you have to be able some choices so that you don't kill your people off, right? Because you can't ask them to award everything in the fourth quarter. You can't ask them to do everything in the fourth quarter, and you can't
Absolutely.
afford to wait. So you got to start making some decisions now. You got to think about what is it that I can do in my role as supervisor, manager, team leader, or the leader of the organization, senior procurement executive, chief procurement officer, whatever your title is, program manager. What can I do now to help my team get the job done? How do I facilitate that? What are the decisions that I can make? And who do I need to engage with? And like you said, bring those relationships to bear, make it happen, make those decisions, and don't be afraid to change those decisions if you have to.
Yeah, agreed.
You can
Agreed.
reprioritize, you can move things.
Absolutely.
That's why they called you the leader. And let me tell you something. People may not like it in the moment that you did it. They'll appreciate it later.
They'll appreciate it.
Benefit
Absolutely.
of it.
They'll
Okay,
appreciate
right?
it.
Because you know what I found? The only time that I was ever disappointed with my leadership is when they did nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
Because nothing accomplishes nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, agreed.
Do
I love it.
You know my favorite phrase, right?
I love
Do
it.
something, even if
Do-
it's wrong. Because
I
if it's
love it.
wrong, you know that you got to go fix it.
Yeah, yeah. At least you know one strategy not to do again. We're not gonna do that. You've improved. Okay, you've improved.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've improved. All right. And with that, we're out. Thank you so
Well,
very
good.
much. Amazing episode. I enjoyed this. This might be worthy of episode.
So much for my not having any energy, right?
This might be worth of a revisit come to quarter 3. So let's hold that in the queue. But amazing.
Right.
Thank you so very much. And again, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this year.
All right. Be well. Take care.
Be well.
Bye-bye.